So Simon Hamp is back on the show. The last time he was here,
Back.
we talked about native PHP. This time, he's got a brand new thing, native PHP iOS. So welcome back, Simon.
Thanks for having me, Eric. It's so good to be back. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, you too. So I think at first we thought native PHP was crazy, and you're just like, no, that's not crazy enough. So we're just going to go full bore into mobile development. So how did this come about?
Whew. Where do I begin? Well, I mean, obviously it starts with native PHP, because none of this would have happened without that. But basically, last year I was looking into doing something that probably I shouldn't do, which is like, how can I run PHP without a web server behind it? And the reason for that was kind of like, I'm looking into building all of this stuff for native PHP for the desktop stuff, and doing it without web servers. And then it kind of dawned on me. I was like, I think this is going to work on a phone because now we haven't got to run a web server. So I started investigating all of that. And I'm like, oh, actually, I can't run like PHP as a separate executable on the phone. So I start to investigate, like, how do I do this as a embeddable PHP? And all of these pieces just start to fall into place. And then I'm like, do you know what? I think I'm going to just hold here for a bit and I'll just seed a few people with the idea of, like, maybe we can do this. I talked to Marcel about it. And I was like, I think we can do this. And we were at Laracon US and I mentioned it to a few people. There's some people in the community who have been on at me like, when is it going to be ready for mobile? And I'm like, ooh, I don't know. And I said to them, I think I've cracked it. Like, I think we're nearly there. And coming back from Laracon US, I was like, the Laracon EU call for papers, or call for talks opened up, and I was like, all right, I'll just put a talk in. Like, the really smallest brief that I could write for a talk was like building mobile apps with PHP, and then like months later, and I've completely forgot about it. I was just like, okay, I'm not going to do anything. I'm gonna wait till I hear if I get anything back on this talk, and if they say no, it's fine. But to my surprise, Kaneko came back to me like out of the blue a couple of months ago. He was just like, really like your talk idea. Do you still want to give it? And I was like, hell yes, I want to give it. But I haven't built any of the stuff that I said I was going to build. So now I've got to go and figure that out. So I finally kind of knuckled down over like the holiday period and just smashed out this thing. And I was like, I couldn't believe that it actually worked. And yeah, then I started sharing more and more stuff about it, just like leading up to my talk. So that's kind of how it came to life. It's probably been a year in the making and quite a lot of work to get there. But
Gotcha. So basically he by accepting the talk, you had a deadline. So at that point,
yeah,
you just had to get something done, right?
Kaneko got his whip out and started like, yeah,
Uh,
giddy up.
that's that's funny. So as far as like the back end on how this actually works, so you write in PHP, you can use Livewire, of course, I guess
Yeah,
CSS, normal CSS
yeah,
like Tailwind
everything.
or something, and then it compiles itself into an Xcode thing, or I guess I don't know how that works. Like what actually runs on iOS?
So it's an Xcode project that gets kind of bundled together, but your Laravel app gets kind of injected into the Xcode project, and then I'm not like transpiling any PHP code into Swift or any other language. It's still running as PHP code. So your actual Laravel project goes onto the phone and it runs as PHP would on the server, kind of, but on the phone. So it's what's happening is the PHP engine has kind of been embedded into the app. And so when the app sees like you're asking it to basically kind of make a request to PHP, which Laravel does very, very by default, it kind of boots up the PHP engine, runs the whole Laravel application through the engine as it normally would, and then just gets the HTML and the headers back and kind of injects all of that response into a web view. And it does it without the web server I was saying earlier. So There's no processes that are sort of hanging around on the device waiting for requests. It literally just goes, oh, you want this? I'll spin all of that up and then finish that, and then here you go. Which is good. Like for me, that's cool because now I can take all of my Laravel stuff and I can just do it on the phone. But yeah, it's not native in the sense of, building a native UI components yet, but it could get there.
Gotcha. What about, I know you said it's sort of like bundles sort of a version of PHP. What about like a database? Like what's your idea there? Is it going to be able to use whatever the iPhone storage is, or you're just doing more API calls back to some other thing?
You've got kind of choices there. I think when people think about Laravel, they think, oh, I can connect to MySQL or Postgres or all these other drivers. But you have to kind of get into the mindset of, I'm building a client application. My Laravel app is really a client to something else, potentially. I mean, it could be just completely standalone. But if you're thinking, I want to run Postgres somewhere, let's say you've got a service running on Laravel Cloud, and you've got a Postgres database, you absolutely do not want to be connecting your client applications, which could be installed on hundreds or thousands of phones in theory, all to that one database without any kind of intermediary. So you'd want it to be going through an API, that you've got authentication going on, and you can tell who's doing what, and give out tokens that you can expire and all of those kinds of things, and just have a good level of control that the database server just won't give you by default without a lot of work. So in that scenario, you should pretty much always be thinking it's going through an API. But because it is just a file system on the phone, you can have a SQLite database running on there, and it comes with SQLite support. So, and Laravel's done a lot of work in the last couple of years to make SQLite support a real first-class supported solution. So it's actually great for that now, and it works really, really well. So you can have a local database that you're updating with eloquent models and using migrations and stuff on the device, which just feels like you're right at home in classic Laravel world, which is great.
That's sweet. What about, what is the best use case? This is sort of my thinking, the way you're kind of describing it. It's never going to be you can never build little games or something with it, but it's more B2B apps, things like that, or is it? What's your thoughts there?
The first app that has, the app that I built that went through the App Store that Apple approved, it is a game technically. I mean, it's not three-dimensional stuff, but there's actually a project called PHPGL something, PHPGLFW or something like that, and it's they're trying to make OpenGL drivers in PHP and all of this. So I can kind of see a point in the future where that could be possible, because there's nothing really preventing you from connecting to the hardware and running all of that kind of, I mean, it's just more maths really, more calculations that are happening. But should you do that in PHP? I don't know. I think people will definitely go, we're trying to build a really performant game here. Let's use the proper frameworks that are available on the platforms, whatever. But yeah, business apps. I mean, I can see potentially businesses that they've already got their service, a SaaS, and then they want this kind of sidecar application that's installable on the phones. So, they might not ever sell that app through the store. They might not ever do anything that kind of directly generates revenue from that app, but, it's a feature of their entire platform. And then, you could get going. Basically, if you had a team of one or two Laravel developers and you didn't want to invest in hiring Swift developers and Kotlin developers or React Native developers, you've got a team now that can build a native app still with their existing Laravel skills, which I think is super powerful and cool. But I do think another thing is like people just have these ideas. I've talked to friends over the last few weeks, and they're like, "I've had this idea for an app," and it's like, "Yeah, but you don't really know how to code, and you don't know how you're going to have to learn all these languages and tools and things." And it's like, I can't build it for them because I didn't know Swift and I didn't know these other languages. But now I can, because I already know like Laravel and PHP. So I can just go, oh, actually, let me just, and a day later, it's like, here's your app. It's like, that's quite cool. I think that's going to be empowering people to kind of try new stuff out and bring new ideas to life, hopefully.
Yes, I think that'll be great. I was just thinking of my own use case. Like, it'd be sweet just to have a little Laravel News app, iOS app. I don't know who would download it, but it would be neat to have that as an option at some point.
Yeah. Or a golf app. It's like, no, you've probably got loads of good golf apps.
I don't know. It would be cooler to hook into. We've actually, me and another buddy talked about this before. It's like have an iOS app where we can like video your swing, and then we hook into like Chat GPT or one of the AI stuff, and it's like, this is what you're doing wrong. You should probably work on, here's some training aids, and something like that might be kind of cool. And you could probably do that through something like this, because it would just be connecting through APIs. I guess, because I did see you take a picture on stage, so it's definitely possible to hook into the camera, right?
I mean, video's a different beast, but I think what you're talking about is essentially like you capture a bit of video, and then you want your app to take that file and automatically sort of process it through some other API and get some data back. It's like, yeah, you could like, that's just very basic web API interaction stuff. So you could totally do that with Laravel now, and that's very, very cool potential stuff that could come from this.
I agree. And well, even talking about Marcel and Beyond Code, having a Tinkerwell on your phone, that could be kind of interesting. I don't know what you would do with it, but you could play around with PHP, as you're doing something. Or more of like an iPad app or something. I don't know, but yeah, that's very cool. So what do you think? I know right now you're iOS only, but you do have it that you're trying to get to Android. Anything else like big that you're wanting to get done before the first release?
I mean, there's loads of APIs that I want to, I'm working on getting working. So that they're usable. And one of the things that I didn't get to do before my talk, which I hoped I'd have time but didn't, was to kind of wrap it all up in the nice. We've got quite a nice API now for native PHP for the desktop stuff, and like the packages are kind of stable and all of that. So I want to bring some of that stability across to this kind of straight away. So we get all of that for free in some respects. And it'll be nice then to have this. You'll have like IDE support, and all of the IntelliSense things are going to be nice and working. I mean, I showed off some of the camera stuff. There's a bit of work to do to make that really smooth and get video and all of those things going. But I think some of those things definitely. But there's a couple of things that come to the top of the list for people always. Push notifications is one, because people want to be able to make the thing kind of remotely sensitive to the stuff that's happening in their application environment elsewhere, which makes perfect sense. And another one is in-app purchases. I haven't ever looked into stuff like that before, but I think it would be really cool if you could have a Laravel app that somebody can go into and they can just trigger like the Apple Pay to purchase something, and that flow just does what it does, and then I don't know, maybe it unlocks something in your app, or maybe it's like taking an order for a fast food restaurant. Who knows? But kind of the fact that then could be done in Laravel is just super cool, and opens the door to businesses generating revenue off of this thing, which is awesome. So I'd really like to get that done. But yeah, there's just so much more. There's loads and loads of stuff that I want to do with this. It's so cool.
So that does sort of bring another question in, as far as like when you're developing locally, you can, since it's PHP, you can just run like PHP unit, pass, sort of the whole normal testing suite, or do you have to like get fancier with how you're going to test all this stuff?
No, so obviously when you're talking about like potentially hitting native APIs, they're not going to be available if you're just running your test suite in the terminal, because you're not running on the device. You're not testing on a real device. But we already have that again in native PHP for desktop, where you might not be running all of your tests inside the browser environment, kind of the web view environment of Electron. And so we basically have a whole bunch of mocks and, fakes that can swap in at test time. So yeah, it's not going to be testing the real stuff, but it's not going to prevent you from having really reasonable tests against those APIs and kind of what your expectations are going to be. That's coming through really well, and a lot of that's been thanks to contributors, giving of their time and making that stuff, because I haven't had the time to do that. So, I think at least to that side of things, the community's really come forward and kind of helped make all of that possible. And I think we can take a lot of the principles of that and bring it over to the iOS stuff as well. Definitely. No doubt.
Sweet. Another question. Is there any sort of performance implications for using native iOS versus, I guess, Swift? I assume there might be, but is it super noticeable, or is it still pretty quick? And
I think it's noticeable because I'm maybe a bit more sensitive to that. Basically, like understanding what's going on under the hood helps here. So for every request that you expect your Laravel application to kind of handle and respond to, we've got to boot PHP up completely from scratch. I mean, it's not even like on a web server where you might have op cache, or processes like in PHP FPM in Nginx. I don't want to get too technical, but you have processes that are just there. They're ready. They're waiting to serve requests. And so when a request comes into the web server, it goes, which one of you is free? Do this thing. And because it's already there and waiting, it's kind of super fast. In this world, we can't spin up processes and have them just waiting around for the user to do some stuff. So we literally have to spin PHP up right from the beginning on every single request at the moment, which, there is just overhead to doing that every time. There's some things that we can do to speed that up. I do think we can get op cache going at some point, and I think I already started exploring some of the putting PHP in a thread on the device, which Swift and this, they can all support multi-threaded applications. So in theory, at least, it could be possible to have like the PHP process just kind of, it's not a process, but the engine just like primed and ready, like kind of ticking over, waiting for the next request, and then it will be a lot faster. But I will say, like right now, it's not too slow. It's not like you tap the button and then you're like, waiting for something to happen. It does react quite quickly, but it is a bit, I will say it's a bit slower than, if you've got native UI and it's just running native code directly, because, well, you've got all this extra stuff that's happening. So yeah, it probably adds like 150 to 300 milliseconds to the whole thing, which, on occasions it can feel a little bit slow.
Gotcha. Yeah, it reminds me of, you remember the old day? Well, you're probably not old enough to know the old days, but
I'm very old.
So the old days when we would build web apps, and it was like, oh, you've got to compress all this down. The extra 10 kilobytes is gonna on dial up. You would have to toggle the thing in your browser to simulate dial up and all that stuff. It's like, now it's like if even on my cell, like just being on the browser, it's like, it's still quick. It's crazy how much faster everything has just gotten over the years. So that's 100 to 300 milliseconds probably is not that bad for what you would be building.
people who are used to building stuff on like on an iPhone, iPhone app developers will go, oh man, this is slow, because they're so used to it being instantaneous. Especially when you're not making network requests, and we're not going out to the network, so it should be really fast. But my kind of counter to it is, this is very early stage, and right. We'll get there. I mean, it's never going to be as fast as truly native, because it just can't be. There's too many layers of stuff going on in between. But I think we can squeeze it down so that it's almost as good as. And I think it's good enough right now, and I think that's fine for a lot of use cases. I think there's a lot of businesses, a lot of agencies that will find that very, very acceptable. So hopefully, anyway.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's perfect sense. So, any features or anything that I did not ask you about that you want to make sure we get covered on this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the things that I have been thinking about, and I was talking about with somebody yesterday even, is the whole ecosystem of building stuff, like mobile apps along with a server-based application. This kind of, you're building all of these tools and you fit them all together, and they're all in different things. You might have React Native mobile apps, so you can do it cross-platform on iPhone and Android, and then maybe on the server you've got Laravel and maybe some other bits and pieces, but generally you're communicating with like a Laravel API. And I've always felt, I've done that for years, and I've always felt it's a little bit disjointed, because not only have you got to have these teams of different people with different skills, and you've got to come up with these mechanisms for these systems to communicate with each other, and you've got to document all of that stuff, and you've got people doing diagrams and writing docs, and it's going out of date, and all of the things. I think having Laravel on both sides of the equation really has the potential to unlock something incredible that I don't see many people talking about. Maybe I'm being ignorant, but where you just forget about the API altogether, and these things just click together and they just work. So you can just go, oh, I install this package over here in my iPhone app, and I install kind of the counter version of that for the server on the server app, and now they can just talk to each other like securely, like best practice, safe and everything, and syncing data, between the two, and you're just using Eloquent on both sides, and you're just like, you don't even care, like, is it talking to the API or is it talking to the local database? I don't know. It doesn't matter, because it just works. It's like, I've never had it that easy, and I think that I'm like this far away from doing something like that, and that feels to me like a killer opportunity to tap into for people. So like I see this as like foundational technology, getting these pieces to work. But then the real stuff is when you can go, these all things fit together. So that's going to be really cool.
Yeah, that's going to be, it's going to be powerful. The feedback I've seen just on the native PHP original is super positive, and everybody seems to like it, outside of a couple community places that I rarely visit, but all the feedback I've heard has been really good. And I think it's got tons of potential.
I like that when you said native PHP original, it made me think of Pringles. This is you got desktop, which is like the red tube of Pringles. What should the mobile one be? What flavor?
The sour cream and onion, because it's got you got the green in the, the website.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. I like it. I was thinking maybe like what's the spicy one, or paprika or something.
We might not have those here in America, or I've not seen those. It's all I've seen is the basic version of Pringles. It's like plain barbecue, sour cream and onion, and salt and vinegar.
No, you're missing out.
Yeah.
You need to get into European shores and try paprika Pringles. They're great.
This is totally off the subject, but Paul, that does a lot of writing on Laravel News. He's one of these chip connoisseurs, and he just tries to find the wildest chips he can find and eats them. And I'm like, it's like ketchup and pickled ketchup. I'm like, I'm not eating none of that, man. It's like, that sounds terrible.
In the UK, there was like one of the common flavors. Like you get the multi-pack flavor of crisps. And it's got salt and vinegar, and it's got the salt, and just cheese and onion. And then the one that was always in there was prawn cocktail.
Oh, God.
It's like, what? Nobody loves this. It stinks.
I mean, that just sounds like the name itself just sounds terrible. It's like, I would never want this. That's hilarious.
I got to meet Paul, chip connoisseur. That's great.
Chip connoisseur.
Official title.
Yes. Y'all can start mailing it back and forth. Different flavors of nasty chips.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Pen pals. But all right. But let's get back on topic. We'll go down a spiral here in a minute. But I guess as far as the release goes, when are you thinking? Another couple months, or you're thinking fairly soon on your release date on like the official thing, or what's your feeling right now?
I mean, there is a lot that I want to build in, but that's kind of like it'll come and it'll keep refining, and there'll always be more because there's a huge API footprint that we've got to kind of tackle to build all the stuff. So I think it's just about getting a few of those key ones. It'd be great if we can get push notifications, in-app purchases, the camera, and a few other bits and pieces going. And then, I mean, Android is the other big piece, right? So we get Android and those things and get everything kind of on par with each other, and then it kind of feels ready. Because right now it's stable enough. There is an app on the App Store that. So the principle of that is you could go today and use it and build a product that you can sell. Like you could sell it on the store, or you could build it for a client that's paying you, and you're basically making money off this thing straight away, which is great. So I feel that it's like stable enough right now to do something. But yeah, it's not going to do all of the things that you might want to do with like interacting with the device APIs. So I think once we've got some of those, the stability is kind of already there. Android will come, and that'll just be like we've got the little cherry on top now with everything working together. So let's just roll this out proper, and then we can continue just like supporting it and maintaining it and improving it. So I think we're probably looking at a couple of months from now, but I definitely want to bring that in as much as I possibly can. So get it going as quickly as possible, basically.
Awesome. Well, when people want to find out more, where should they go? You got like a newsletter sign up or anything like that for them?
Yeah, the easiest place to go to is nativephp.com/iOS, because it is iOS only at the moment. But yeah, the docs are coming together on nativephp.com. We've got now like the whole section of like switching between desktop and mobile documentation, so you can start to see all of that come together. And if you go to that page that I just mentioned, there's the chance to join the early access program, and there's a sign up link there as well for a newsletter if you're not ready to join the early access program, so you can find out more. I'll be sharing updates and stuff on the newsletter over the coming weeks, like probably once a week for the next few weeks.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to, let us talk about Native PHP iOS.
I'm really glad to have the opportunity again. Thanks, Eric.
I'm excited. I'm excited to see where this brings the community in the future. Like we're
yeah, me too.
It feels like Laracon EU with all the announcements around Laravel proper announcements. Then you have what you're doing. You had Fusion. You have all this stuff is just coming out of nowhere in the last year, and it's pretty inspiring. And I think we're going to be able to do a lot with Laravel in the future.
Yeah, I can't wait to use Fusion. I think Aaron said he's going to bring it out on Friday, wasn't it? I think he was going to do it on Monday originally, but now it's going to be this Friday. And I want to get my hands on that and chuck it into native PHP and see if it work on mobile out of the box, because I think that's going to be really cool. Because I think Vue, I've been showing most of my demos from like Livewire, because I really like using Livewire, but I used to do a lot of Vue, and I know that there's like a space for still doing that. And I think allowing people to use whatever front end tooling really makes sense, and there's nothing to stop you. Like, I can't tell you can't do it. So you can use Vue or React or whatever, and I think Fusion will just slot right in there and just work. And I just want to try it out so that I can see if that happens. And I think that's going to be very cool for a lot of people, because Aaron did an awesome job. His talk was brilliant, and the project looks great too. So I'm really excited to see that.
For sure. All right. Well, Simon, thank you again for coming and joining me, and we'll look forward to the launch and to everything you're working on.
Thanks, man.